Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. Today I've come back to do my April wrap-up of all of the books that I read in April. Now I'm just going to quickly go through a few books that I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail with, either because they are rereads or because they are books that I want to do a bit more justice in a larger video. So to start off with, I have got Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies, both by Hilary Mantel. These are the first two books in the Thomas Cromwell trilogy. These books chronicle the life of Thomas Cromwell, who was chief minister to Henry VIII up until 1540 when he was executed. The first book, Wolf Hall, takes place predominantly in a 10-year period between around about 1525 to 1535 with the death of Thomas More, whereas Bring Up the Bodies chronicles just under 1 year between 1535 and 1536 when Anne Boleyn was executed. Hilary Mantel has received so much praise and recognition for the Thomas Cromwell series, and it is absolutely fantastic. It is so atmospheric of life at the Tudor court, and it is well worth your read if the Tudor court is something that you are interested in. However, I do think I'm going to go further into detail with these books once I finish The Mirror and the Light, which is the third and final book, so look forward to that when it does eventually come. A reread for me this month was Emma by Jane Austen. I absolutely love Emma so much, and especially with the film coming out earlier this year, I had to pick this up. This tells the story of the young Emma Woodhouse, who is beautiful, rich, and who is determined that she is not going to marry, but that she is going to matchmake everybody around her. It is so funny, it has so much satire and commentary, and I absolutely love it. I'd probably say it is my second favourite Austen next to Pride and Prejudice, and if you haven't read it, it's well worth a read. With the lockdown, there's been a lot of theatre being put up online, and so I was absolutely delighted to see so many Shakespeare plays were put up. So I rewatched and reread Romeo and Juliet, but then also did Titus Andronicus, which I have never seen or read before. This is known as being Shakespeare's most gruesome play. There are many deaths and many maimings that occur in this book. Lots of hands being cut off, which is not for the faint of heart. Personally, I wasn't a massive fan of Titus Andronicus, unfortunately. I feel like it is most notable for its violence and not really for the language or the wit that is so strong and so prevalent in his later works. That being said, Titus Andronicus did give us the very first "your mum" joke, so I guess we have to give it props for that. Next to show you is Gentleman Jack by Anne Chomer. This is all about the life of Anne Lister, who was a landowner in the town of Halifax, which is very local to me and where I grew up. She lived in the 19th century and was unique in her position as being a female landowner. She was a unique and notable figure in the community of Halifax, both for being a female landowner, but also because she dressed very differently. She preferred a much more masculine style. She's also come to much more attention due to the transcribing of her diaries, which revealed her many sexual exploits with women. Her family were actually quite supportive of her, even though she did have to keep this a general secret from the rest of the public. And back in 2019, there was a big BBC drama about her life featuring Saran Jones in the title role of Anne Lister. I was also really fortunate to have a placement at Shibden Hall as part of my master's degree, so I was really keen to read this, and I can't believe I hadn't done it sooner. Anne Chomer's book largely follows the narrative of the show, so if you've already seen the TV show, this will just add a little extra depth and give you some insight from her diary entries especially. However, I would say that if you are looking for a more comprehensive biography that includes details from the beginning to the end of her life, this only goes up as far as her marriage to Anne Walker, whereas Angela Steedale has a more comprehensive biography, and I shall link that down below. The next book is one that I absolutely adored, and I devoured it in the space of one day, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This story follows two timelines, one when Vanessa is 15 and one where she is in her early 30s, and it follows her relationship and her affair with her English teacher. In the later timeline, her English teacher is being revealed to the public for his many affairs with students, and she's very conflicted because she sees the relationship that she had at age 15 with him as being very consensual and that she did have control, but obviously from our perspective, you wonder how she can think that this is true when she was only a child when it happened. And this story very much explores this notion of consent and power, and the power that authority figures have over young children, and just how messy and complicated those relationships can be. It was absolutely haunting and such a wonderful read. Obviously, I think if you are somebody who finds these topics quite sensitive, then I would avoid it, but Otherwise, an absolutely brilliant read. It was a 5-star for me, one of my favourite books of the year, and I highly recommend it. The next book I read is a take on a classic, which is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, with a translation by Simon Armitage. This follows Sir Gawain, who is a knight at King Arthur's court, who on New Year's Eve meets a challenge by this mysterious Green Knight and promptly wins the challenge, but on the condition that the knight will find him a year from now and repay whatever blow Gawain dealt to him. Gawain fritters the rest of the year away, knowing though that eventually he is going to be confronted by this Green Knight and eventually has to go and meet him, and all of the fun that ensues with that. It is such an enjoyable read, though I will say if you don't like alliteration, then this will not be your friend. There is so much alliteration in here, but I found it quite enjoyable. Yeah, definitely a 5-star read for me. If you are looking into more medieval, early modern classics, then this is definitely one for you. I should probably meet that with another very, very funny book, and for me that was Dead Famous, An Unexpected History of Celebrity by Greg Jenner. Greg Jenner is a public historian. He is well known for writing on Horrible Histories, which is a children's history education show, which is very, very funny. I had the pleasure to meet him last year on my public history course because he took a seminar with us and was just a delightful person to know. And this just chronicles the history of celebrity and our perceptions of celebrity, and kind of giving us the idea that our concepts of celebrity are very, very old indeed. Greg kind of charts it back to around about 300 years ago that our real notions of celebrity and our attitudes towards celebrity started to take root. This book chronicles the lives of many different famous people, how they got to become famous, and how their lives were either improved or destroyed by our cult of celebrity, and how we treat these different people who are in the public eye. Like I say, this book is absolutely hilarious. There are so many funny lines. I don't tend to annotate my books very much, but for this, I just had to highlight every single funny line that was in there, and it basically ended up being every other page. Greg Jenner talks about the 3 different kinds of celebrity that you can come across. The ascribed celebrity, people who are born into fame. The achieved celebrity, where somebody's talent and efforts have risen a person to fame. And then attributed celebrity, where somebody's reputation in the media or by the public have given them celebrity. Greg Jenner then attributes all 3 of those things to Miley Cyrus, somebody who was born to a famous father, who then later got her own fame through her own talents and her singing and her acting, who then also had notoriety because of her reputation. He concludes by saying, Miley straddled Rojek's 3 categories of ascribed, achieved and attributed celebrity, and she did it all in leopard print, arseless chaps. Classic Miley. Just little lines like that are peppered throughout and just make it such an enjoyable read. It also gives you a lot of food for thought about how we treat celebrities both nowadays and people in the past. Fame can be fun, or it can be a foistium packed with the devil. It dumps barrowloads of cash, parties and private jets at the celebrities' feet, but it also entitles the public and media to savagely interrogate their right to exist in our eyeline. It invites emulation, obsession and fantasizing, but it can also bring demonizing, dehumanizing and degrading aggression. Most celebs therefore slide up and down the axis of adoration. One week they're loved, the next week we hate them. But we remain invested in their story because they're frosted mirrors for reflecting who we are, who we think we should be, and who we want to be. So yes, yet another book that I absolutely loved and recommend to everybody. We then have The Foundling by Stacey Halls. This takes place in the 18th century and follows as a young woman gives up her daughter, her newborn daughter, to adoption. She takes her to the Foundling Hospital with full intention that when she has raised enough money that she will come and get her back. However, 6 years later, she goes back to the hospital and is told by the staff there that she already came back to claim her daughter the day after. And the story is her trying to find out what happened to her daughter and who took her. For me personally, this was a bit of a disappointing read. Right up until she found out that her child was taken, I was really into it. I found it very atmospheric, very emotional and affecting. However, after that, I found that it did just drag, and this wasn't helped by the fact that the mystery of who took the child was solved in about the first third, and then for the remaining 2/3 of the novel, you're just waiting for that explosion to happen, for the big confrontation to happen. And when the confrontation does come, I didn't find it very satisfying, which is not helped by the fact that I found the characters to be very weak, very one-dimensional, and then the ending just seemed a bit too neat considering everything that had just happened. So personally, not my favourite historical fiction that I've ever read. I then read Such a Fun Age by Keely Reid. This was a really interesting book for me. This tells the story of Amira, who is a young 25-year-old black woman living in America, and she looks after the young child of a white family. Late at night, Amira is called by the mother of the child to look after her during a family emergency. She takes her to the supermarket and then ends up being apprehended by the security officers who believe that she is kidnapping this white child that she is babysitting. And this one incident spirals into so many different events and so many different topics. This book handles a lot of different topics, but most notably the topic of white saviorism, as the mother of the child is really spurred by this whole incident and decides that she's going to take Amira under her wing as an apology for what has happened. But we're really led to believe, is she doing all of this for Amira or only to make herself look good? Is she helping because she wants to help, or is it all just for clout? I thought this brought up a lot of really interesting topics, and I think this would be a fantastic book for book groups. But for me personally, I did have a few issues, mainly regards to pacing and dialogue. I found it a bit awkward. There were a lot of moments with the pacing where scenes would run on and just drag and drag for ages, and then others where it was sped up way too much. The dialogue I found a bit stilted and unnatural, and I just didn't believe that people would have conversations like this. So that did hinder my overall enjoyment, but I do definitely think that the message and the topics that it covers means it is well worth a read. Alright, apologies for the slightly different lighting. I'm actually coming back to you a few hours after I initially filmed because my phone decided that it had run out of storage, which was very inconvenient. But yeah, that was everything that I read and wanted to review for you for April. Hopefully I can have as good a reading month and read as many things whilst we're in lockdown at the moment. I hope you've had a lovely month. I hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.